Well, good morning, Rana. This is Ed Reether speaking with Rana Chowdhury in New Zealand and Ed Reether in Taos, New Mexico. This is our fourth session together. And I wanted to first say good morning to you and hello, Rana.
And hello, Ed. Good afternoon to you
Yes,
and to all the listeners.
we're worlds apart,
Yes.
but we're also circling the world as we speak. So, to continue on with our discussion, we were speaking about the time that you then had the opportunity, after many years of working not only within the community of Adi Da, but outside and in India and your home in Bangladesh, that you met Adi Da.
Yes.
And would you like to continue? Do you want me to refresh where we were, or do you remember where we were in your um, Leela?
Leela, yes. I do remember. And so the point was, as you said, that finally in 2006, after preparing within the community in Australia, by the way, I'm in Australia. So after 3 years preparing, I went and saw Adi Da in 2006. And that was obviously a turning point for me. And after that, he was alive only 2 more years. So a lot happened in that short time. But just from my side of the story, after my time around Adi Da in his main sanctuary in Fiji, I came back to Australia, and soon after that, I went to India. And with some other friends that are also devotees, we did a lot of work all around India for 6-7 months, traveled to many places, and for most of those places, it was the first time people got to hear and see Adi Da through video and stories, Leila's books. So after that, I came back to Australia, and then another year and a half later, Adi Da passed away end of 2008. Since then, I have been going to India not just to visit my family, but I always try and find opportunity to do some service, to make Adi Da known, which is my biggest joy. So that I have been doing ever since. I mean, I really started in 2004.
So can I ask you a question? When you first went after meeting Adi Da in person and went back to India, as you said, with other devotees, and what was the venue by which you went out into the Indian culture and social cities and towns? What was the venue? How did you present, or who did you go to ashrams or bookstores, or I don't know where you went and how you did it?
So to continue, in India, I was trying to give the background that even though Adi Da started teaching in America and the Western world in 1972, in India he was hardly known. So at the time when I became a devotee, I think there were only other 5 or 6 devotees from India altogether. So it was very small, and I think out of the 5 or 6, maybe 4 or lived in India still, and there were no communities, no ashrams, no large anything. It was just a few people that somehow came to find Adi Da and became devotees. And there were a few Indian background devotees that lived in America. So it was a very small group of us, but with a lot of happiness and excitement, we did those months in a significant way for the first time in India. And yes, we also visited some ashrams as well. And then in the following years, all the way till 2010 or 12, we made several trips, and in some of those trips, we specifically went to various ashrams. Yes.
And so because my work in India a little bit when I went there was with Jaipur and some of the people there and other people in in the north that had some association with him. And what was the response, if you were to generally categorize the response that people were giving you initially, or what they were receiving?
Yes. It was very interesting. It was very interesting that it was a paradoxical situation. On the one hand, um, people were very responsive to a guru from whichever place, even if not Indian. That was new to them, of course. But nevertheless, what was amazing to see that um, the Indian tradition with gurus of thousands of years, they have a natural ability to recognize if they see someone that is a realizer of any degree, enlightened to any degree, they can see it. You don't need to convince them. So that's
Right.
the beautiful part, that there were people that very naturally, without us saying anything, if they just saw a photo, people did pranam, and it was very natural. People would come, offer gifts, or you know, uh, without asking. So that side was beautiful. And then also up to a certain point, people that came to the events, they wanted to find out more. They wanted to know how they could be involved. Is there an ashram? So that was very quick. And a lot of people were responsive in that way. However, there was also another thread where they did ask a lot of questions. That, okay, he's a genuine guru born in the West. That's incredible, but it's obvious he is, a realized being that we can see. Um, but we have questions. So the questions became, as you can imagine, one very typical question was, well, it's fine for him to claim he's a genuine realizer, and India has hundreds of them. So alongside all of that, of course, people who respond to him in India, could create an ashram for him and, take on the way of life he's given, all of that. But we really don't understand all these 7-stage, one and only, the divine avatar. Oh, that was the other issue. Indians understand avatar. It's a Sanskrit term. World teacher, divinely manifested, incarnated. So,
Well,
so that,
you have in the tradition of India, Mara Baba, Saya Baba,
right,
you
exactly,
know, yeah.
exactly. So I faced a lot of questions. It was a very interesting experience for me. Learned a lot.
I'll
Uh,
bet.
yes. And then, apart from that matter of, okay, how is he the greatest or the latest or the one and only or the avatar, that they found very confronting. And then uh, another issue was that, well, can we still be followers of whatever we are already part of? Do we have to give that up? Could we accept him as guru, but also, continue to practice whatever we already had? So that was another kind of question. And then there were also some more educated kind of people from the big cities. Some of them were also coming with an energy of really challenging and saying, hang on, hang on. This is somebody, we don't care how enlightened or awake he is. We don't want to be disrespectful, but he should teach in the Western world. He should leave India alone. We don't need gurus. We have many of them. And, Westerners need, it is a good thing if you have one now. Uh, that's great. So, so that is, to summarize some of the main responses we got. Another one I would say is some of the people that were very humble, but very in a traditional way, genuinely, when they recognize a guru, they are really genuinely, with all their love, their devotion, the response is very humble, but very real. That was very beautiful and refreshing. But then their difficulty was that they said, well, we would need a place of concentration. We'll need at least a temple. If not an ashram to begin with, we at least need a temple where we can gather, do the practices, worship, chant. In India, it's a very lively culture. It's not as much, as in the Western world. Often it can be a lot of education and, and focusing on disciplines. In India, it's primarily a very heartfelt, emotionally involved, expressive, singing, dancing, praising the guru and prayers. It's a lot of that. Um, so, so that side was there as well. That a lot of people, by the time we left, were in tears. They said, "Oh, for 2 weeks we've had, we just met in hotel rooms or a rented heart space, but we did various, chanting and practices, and they would join in, and it's new people." So by the time we left, they said, "Oh, we want this devotional life. Where can we continue this?" So that has been a challenge, establishing actual physical places where responsive people in India could, then be established as a small community and grow from there.
Right.
But in terms of the response that we saw, it was largely very positive. And I have no doubt that if and when from the essentially Western gathering of Adi Da's followers that to this day is the reality, and as you know, it's only in a few countries and it's not that large. So in terms of just, I'm speaking very simple, realistic terms, that just the human resources to have enough devotees able to manage their lives wherever we are in the Western world, including myself now, to be able to make the time and go over as a group, as a team, do the service, and then let it take root. So I'm happy to say, as of now, there is one place where something like that has begun, and that is actually near Ramana Maharshi's ashram in Tiruvannamalai.
So in your time there, I'm sure you were Western kind of wandering sadhus, to be liberal about their practice. Um, I'm sure that also was a part of the audience that came, and especially in Tiruvannamalai. I mean, when Muji would come through,
Yes.
Muji would gather 1,000 people on a weekend just by
Yes.
showing up.
Uh-huh.
So those seekers, if you will, or Ramana Maharshi, I'm liberal to call them devotees, but people who respect the ashram or the Indian culture there, there's a lot of Westerners there. So were there a lot of Westerners that were attending these um, offerings that you were?
Yes, very much
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yes.
Now that, and I don't want to get into the details, but that would, down the line, I would like to discuss with you these issues that were brought up, because I think your understanding and my understanding can kind of hone a lot of this uh, general understanding of these issues that I think are very, very important to articulate in a way that can be illuminating and not exclusive to any other or exclusive to any other discipline or devotee um, or practitioner in any way. I think it would illuminate, at least I believe that we could illuminate the broadness of who Adi Da is without excluding people.
Yes, yes, I would very much like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so you came back from your first time, went back to New Zealand, and were you doing any work yourself in terms of your livelihood? How did you support yourself? Were you still in school?
No, no, by that time I had finished my studies and I started teaching English as a second language to international students in Australia. And I did that for many years.
And so what is your primary, what's your native language? What's the name of your native language?
It's Bangla. So
Bangla.
that's Bangla. And I mean, anglicized would be Bengali.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the language of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, just as a reference.
Right.
That's
Right.
their language, was Bengali.
Right. Right. And so when you went back to New Zealand, you were also teaching and now establishing the community of the practitioners of Adi Da.
Uh, yes, I mean, yes, that description is accurate enough. To be fair, the reality is when we say community, is that the community here is pretty small, and like most of the other places now where Adidas devotees exist, this is a sad reality that the community cohesion is not there as it used to be. And um, so like when I've been here in Australia 17 years, but the first 5 to 7 years, the community was very active. There were like 50 devotees. We had one, gathering place where we met, twice a week, for various practices, retreats, study, doing service of various kinds, and of course, making Adidas work known to others. It was very active. But after Adida's passing, I think this is something that, as a general trend, has happened in many of the cities around the world where Adidas devotees are. A lot of scattering happened. And I didn't mention one important question in India I faced, but it's related to what I'm about to say here, is some Indians had a very positive response, but then they said, well, it would be different if he was alive. But now that he has passed, I'm speaking since 2008, I do get a lot of people asking that if we have an Indian guru that's alive, why should I not go there? That is one kind of question. Well, I'm connecting that to the situation with the community in Australia and in many places in America, Europe as well, that since Adida's passing, even amongst his devotees, it is a reality. I'm not giving any moral judgment. I'm just saying it's an actual observable fact that for a lot of devotees, it is a different phase, that they remember while Adida was alive as an incredible time, but that had its time. That's how they personally look at it. And many of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
people
yeah.
are older as well, so there are, human realities where they cannot travel as much. Um, and yeah, while Adida was alive, everybody tried to organize their whole year of life and responsibilities and everything to be able to go see him in whichever sanctuary he may be at the time.
Well, for me, this is a very crucial address that you're pointing to, and maybe we could spend a minute here or two discussing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I were to kind of put that in a kind of a context that we could kind of talk about,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain phenomena when associated with the living siddha, which implies that there's a transmission,
Mm-hmm.
that you can just be in his or her company and feel a radiance that is palpable and penetrating, and in many times yogically will open up various centers
Mm-hmm.
in the body mind. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no denying the physical contact that people have had with realizers, and we're speaking specifically of Adida when he was embodied, that there was a transmission that people felt and then therefore responded to,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a double side to that, because as he spoke to in many times, is that you're just feeding off my energies and
Mm-hmm.
you are not understanding what I'm transmitting here. You're just taking it and feeling the effects of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the real depth now is because that transmission, now we have to bring in that there are holy places, there are holy sites, there are, and from his transmission, as it is evidenced in your life, there are books or psychic forces that is still being transmitted that can be identified, as you did in your case and my case also, is that outside of his physical company, there is a transmission that is still palpable. It's still felt. Now, which is really now getting nuanced, because as you didn't understand the transmission at first to be Adi Da, and in my case, I did not understand the transmission to be Adi Da. This is where it gets a little bit nuanced, but I want to go back to this non-embodiment and being a Satguru, being a transmitter, as opposed to just somebody who can awaken you in personal company, but now we have a transcendental transmission that is associated with Adi Da. Maybe we could speak to that.
Well, wonderful, and at the same time, it's such a profound consideration.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Very much so. And this, how I would like to approach this is, let's say in Buddhism, that well-known mantra, or many people may know this, is Buddhang Sharanang Gacchami, Dhammang Sharanang Gacchami, Sanghang Sharanang Gacchami. That's in the ancient Pali language. That means I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. So transmission of a realizer, past or present, has those three vehicles. That in the physical human embodiment lifetime of the Buddha, that's the direct transmission. From that, the other vessels are created in that lifetime. Any human body, including the human body of a divinely awakened or spiritually awakened of any degree realizer, still is a mortal body, so it dies. But the transmission can continue, but it has a condition of fulfillment. If that is not fulfilled, the transmission will not continue, or it may not be accessible. So that then brings to the Dharma and the Sangha. And just as the Buddha himself did, and every realizer we know, in their lifetime, they established, no matter how small, a Dharma and a Sangha. Critical. That for any growth past their lifetime depends on that. So the Dharma, very simple, we understand it's the teaching. So the realizer gives the teaching, either spoken or written, or both. So that, now looking at, in Adi Da's case, he lived almost 70 years, and that, would have been wonderful if he lived longer, but still, it's a significant length of time, longer than many other realizers of the past. And he's also fully recorded because of modern technology and everything. Many of the realizers of older time, even 100 years ago, we don't have that kind of, Ramakrishna, we have only 5 photographs. Adi Da's entire life has been meticulously recorded, and his entire teaching is, meticulously recorded. It's vast. So nothing is lacking there. So to just kind of look at it that way, I'm bringing that whole conversation consideration that he lived almost 70 years, and as the enlightened master, his demonstration through his physical embodiment of his realization, that was perfected. There's nothing lacking there, and all the recordings of photographic and videographic, we have vast amount of that. So we are greatly blessed that that great gift is there. Then the Dharma, recording of him physically, but also the Dharma. So both of those are covered. When it comes to the Sangha, now we go into the matter. That the Sangha then, the three, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the places that hold that triple vessel are the ashrams. Now, in whatever tradition, that spiritual sanctuary where there is a body of practitioners fully dedicated to the teaching and the teacher and the way of life, that they embody it. They do it at a very simple, humble level, but it is an extension of the Guru embodying it in his lifetime. Adi Da often used to say that my body is the teaching. And that understanding goes all the way back to the Buddha's descriptions of the various bodies, Shambhoga Kaya, Dharmakaya, Nirmana Kaya. Kaya means body. Anyway, so the Sangha as the body and the ashrams, holy places, sanctuaries, together is how always, anciently and now, it is possible for new people to come and be in contact with that unmistakable transmission that's unique to each realizer.
Now, here you're speaking to what he calls the treasures.
Sacred treasures, yes. That the sacred treasures, to be specific in his case, are the 5 sanctuaries, spiritual sanctuaries he established, and they are full of his transmission. Anybody that has lived there or traveled there unanimously can attest to that. And so that is number one, that in terms of, okay, even though Adi Da is past, how can we access his transmission is, of course, the highest opportunity would be to visit the sanctuaries. But then that may not be an easy process. People feel, well, they're set apart places. There will be a whole process to go through to go to that point. Between now and that, nothing in between. Well, there is supposed to be something in between. It is not in a very significant way existing there, and that's a part of a sad reality. But and that can change, it should change. But what I mean by that is the concept of what Adi Da called global ashram. That his vision, the means he gave for large numbers of people, not just from Western world, anywhere, to be able to come into contact with him, was through the extended community. So it's now going past the 5 sanctuaries that he established. What he asked his devotees to do is that in every country where devotees exist, like here in Australia or New Zealand or England, Holland, anyway, that beyond the 5 major sanctuaries, devotees were supposed to establish sacred domains, as in a cooperative community on, pieces of land, and
Now,
that is all
you're,
ashram.
you're speaking as what I believe the term to be the Global Cooperative Forum.
That's right. So this is the more later name, because Adi Da stopped using a lot of the Sanskrit words because a lot of people, has got some language barriers, let's say. So he, in the last years of his life, called it the Adi Da Global Cooperative Forum, yes. But the understanding, nevertheless, is a globally extended ashram, as in wherever we go in the world, if there is a small community of devotees living that ashram way of life, then that becomes the first point of contact. And with a group of devotees living that life that Adi Da has given through all the practices and means and invocation, then in those places, new people coming, they would feel his transmission.
And see, this is really the key point, because then the transmission or the guru's grace, although I don't want to limit it just to the physical dimension, but in the personal sense and the social sense, which is what I want to stay focused with here, is that it has to come through the devotee. It has to come through the person who you are associated with in that relationship. As he said, there's no technique
Yes.
here. There's a relationship.
Very, very important point. Yes, Ed. And as I'm sure you're familiar, that when devotees over the years would ask Adi Da, what is the secret of the Adi Da, mission? As in, as in the work of making him known to the world and attracting new people, calling that mission. And he would always say, you are the way to me. He didn't say my books are the way to me, or teachings on websites are the way to me. He said, you, those who are my devotees, you physically present, you are the way. And you're absolutely right that the secret there is what he said from the beginning of his teaching, that I offer you a relationship, not a technique.
And that relationship is one of attraction.
Yes.
Right? It's
Absolutely.
not, it's you as a devotee, I'm speaking in the generic sense, is that you have to embody an attractive force that brings people into the possibility of them feeling something more than what you look like, to put it in simple
Right.
terms, right?
Beautifully you put. And then that reminds me again of one of those many brief, potent expressions of Adi Da. So in another conversation, this probably happened in the 70s, a devotee that was doing missionary work and talking about Adi Da in places going, and then he asked similar question of, what is the secret? How do we, because I'm putting out a lot of energy and I'm not getting enough response. And Adi Da said three simple things. He said, first, they feel me, meaning new people, whoever. First, they feel me, then they know me, then they know my name. In that order. He said, you will get it wrong if you start going out with my name and try to tell people this is the greatest teacher. First thing is they feel me. They have to feel me. And there's the connection with the other secret. How would they feel me? Yes, you can show my pictures or videos, but you have to be there. You who have been with me physically. If you are there, I'm paraphrasing in that kind of my understanding of what he means. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but that if these physical devotees that had the incredible great fortune while he was alive to be in his presence, feel his transmission, feel his unconditional, boundless love, attraction, that you're saying, that nectar, bees again, bees that have tasted that, only they can, create that human context in which new people can come and feel that. That, without that, people can get interested in the teaching. They can see Adi Da as a very wise man, great writer, artist, philosopher. There are thousands of people, in fact. This is such a case in point that I think in 2004 or 5, in one of his broadcast discourses, Adi Da said, over the years, more than 30,000 people came to me and became a formal devotee at different times. Most of them are gone. And then he said, the connection between a devotee and a guru is profound and sacred and divine, and it has two sides. The devotee, that connection is like a vow. And he says, well, all these people that have come and gone, they don't realize I always hold my end of the vow.
Well, because I speak to so many people who were of one of those 30,000 people,
Well,
we have to speak not only of the attraction, but we also have to speak of the demand,
yes.
or what he addressed as the crisis, or the confrontation with the understanding or the resistance, because you can get attracted to the sublimity of his siddhi, but there is a requirement on your end of the relationship to stay in that light which turns to the fire. So we're now speaking of a requirement that you now, although you are initially attracted, the
Yes.
demand that you are then asked to stay with him is something that has to be understood, because part of this relationship is a concept called self-understanding. And
Yes.
this mechanism that he addresses in everybody, and primarily if you get into the room with him, you will feel that there is a resistance to this presence that he is. So,
Absolutely. Yes. Very, very important point. So I can say that these two sides, the attraction, the love, the nourishment, is, you could say, it's the divine feminine aspect. You know, in Indian terms, it would be the Shakti aspect, the principle of light, the principle of energy, love. It's the divine in the feminine aspect. And then the Shiva aspect is the divine masculine aspect that represents then the demand for understanding and the demand for surrender and transcendence, that of and passing tests, going beyond our limits, confronting what is putting the limit in the reality which is always already true, but I'm not experiencing it. What is the barrier? Well, that has to be understood and transcended, and it's a responsible, heroic task or response required by the masculine aspect of the divine. Now, this is not unique to Adi Da, this matter of these two sides that are involved in any authentic spiritual practice. Throughout the ages, that was understood in all the traditions. And then in the Sufi tradition, there's beautiful two words, Jamal and Jalal. So one means the divine in its loving, nurturing aspect, and the other one is the demanding, fierce aspect. We have this experience communicated to us in the most natural first experience as human beings through mother and father. Usually our experience, father is that humanly communicating that vast divine aspect of the manly demand to, pass tests and transcend yourself, be strong, accomplish things, prove, but mother's love is unconditional.
all right.
So I'm just broadly saying that that is archetypal in our connection to the divine, but also in our connection to mother and father. And then, so yes, in terms of then the devotees being the way to the guru. For new people, the natural process would be, and this again Adi Da has always said, not just for new people, at all stages of practice for devotees likewise. This is one principle he very simply described, that you can discipline only to the degree that you love. He said that about how to raise children, that you make demands of them, but you can never exceed, the demands should never exceed the love. The love has to be always greater. So that is the principle, that if the attraction to a guru, the awakening of love, and the communication of love both ways, the devotee feeling the guru's love and the guru receiving the devotee's love, that is primary always. That when that is beyond a doubt, only then can a devotee respond to the masculine side of demands. If there's not enough of that nurturing, loving as the foundation, then what will happen? After a certain point, the devotee will go through self-doubt, fear, collapse, despair, failure, give up, no, I'm not good enough, maybe I should leave, all of that. Adi Da often just summarized that kind of crisis for a devotee approaching him as something that throws him into either self-doubt or guru doubt.
Right.
Something's wrong with me, oh, something's wrong with this guru. He demands too much. His demands are impossible. I know there are other ways that are easier. This is not for me. But if the flow of transmission through the three vessels, the Buddha and the Dharma, and extended by the Sangha, if that is flowing without obstruction, then for new people it would not be something intimidating, because there'd be, yes.
I want to bring up this point now. We're speaking of the attraction.
Yes.
And there's another element to the response that devotees have had and also have had difficulty with, and he calls it the dual sensitivity.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because not only is the guru an attraction, so is the world and the pleasures and the refinements and the joy that people can find in just basic nature, food, sex, power, money, fame, these worldly attractions that
Yes.
will capture. And so fundamentally, I believe my understanding is that when you begin to suspect or intuit or feel the failure, or as the Buddha would say, the impermanence, or
Yes.
the shunyata, the emptiness,
Mm-hmm.
not only of the world, but of one's self
Yes.
as a phenomenon called me or I.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're getting into this kind of self that you have to feel the futility of what is really the motivating driving force of the world.
That's right.
And everything associated with it.
Yes.
National identity, religious identity, family identity,
The
personal
whole package.
identity, all of it.
Yes.
And the
This.
seductions.
Yes. Seductions. Well, and modern world, my God, we are hypnotized, utterly surrounded by this, enveloped in this ocean of distraction. In the old days, people didn't have much by way of options. Now there's so much.
Well, I can sit here and look at you and look at this environment and just have fantasies about what it's like in New Zealand and the pleasant
Right.
springtime. I'm in the winter and I've got to be cold and you're in the sunshine. I want to go there. I want to go. I want to go. I want to get out of here, you know.
Yes. Well, on that note,
Yes.
I mean, definitely we'll further continue this, but I do have to go now.
Okay.
So I'll watch this, so I'll be prepared for where to pick it up again next time.
Okay. Well, until then again.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.